Jenny Salisa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The services of our police are crucial, Mr. Speaker, in New Zealand. It is a public service paid for by all of us as taxpayers, and police vetting is a public good that should continue to be funded by taxpayers. This bill, the Police Cost Recovery Bill, proposes amending the Policing Act of 2008 to allow police to be able to recover the cost of certain services they defined as demand services. An example that the bill gives of a demand service is a provision of vetting services. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the previous Labour Speaker, Mika Whaitiri, who said that Labour really values our volunteers. We have thousands and thousands of people that volunteer across New Zealand, Mr. Speaker, and there are so many services that this current government no longer funds that our volunteers have stepped up to provide. What will this bill, after it's passed, have as an effect on many of these volunteers? What this bill says is they will be charged to go and get the police vetting service before they can provide the voluntary services that they do not charge for. The opposition parties, Mr. Speaker, put through supplementary order papers, 3 in particular, one from my colleague Porter Williams, another from another colleague of mine from Labour, Chris Hipkins, and another from the Green Party, from David Clendon. And all of these SOPs were to ensure that various groups do not have to pay for these vetting services. However, this current government did not agree to those SOPs. So the Labour Party does not support this particular bill, Mr. Speaker. This is a national government that has increasingly...
I apologise for interrupting the member, but there's a degree of rudeness occurring. Members can sit down or go to the lobby, but not continue conversations like that. Jenny Salisa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a national government that has increasingly grown arrogant and out of touch. They're ignoring the really big issues that are facing the majority of New Zealanders: the housing crisis, the rising inequality, cuts to police services, health and education. This is a government that has talked about the $1.8 billion surplus, but it doesn't actually talk about the government's rising debt. 600% it's risen during the watch of this current government since 2008. Instead, the Prime Minister has talked about how he wants to deliver a $3 billion tax cuts. Now is not the time to be talking about tax cuts, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
Not when we are experiencing huge cuts to the police, Mr. Speaker. National has stretched our police to the point where the Police Association president described it as being at crisis point, Mr. Speaker. Crime is on the rise again. Resolution rates are falling. Police are overstretched, Mr. Speaker. That's why Labour will fund 1,000 more police, extra police, to stop crime rates from rising and to take the pressure off of our hard-working police, men and women. Mr. Speaker, this is a shonky attempt to cover up this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, is a shonky attempt to cover up the financial and operational gaps that this current government, instead of actually just funding a core public service, which is our police, to do their job well, including vetting of our volunteers and vetting of others, Mr. Speaker, this government should actually just fund that. What they're doing instead is they're cutting frontline police in real terms, which has meant that the police do not have the numbers of staff that they need to do their jobs safely and well. Instead of addressing this issue, Mr. Speaker, they are wanting to get the cost from the public, from our volunteers, so that the police can be funded in that way, and we do not agree with that. At the Select Committee, there were so many submissions to the Select Committee that strongly rejected this particular bill. Most of those who made oral submissions to the Select Committee, which represented a cross-section of charitable and non-profit organisations providing valuable community services and voluntary services in New Zealand, they're against this bill. They're against the fact that they should be paying for these vetting of the police. The safety of our children, Mr. Speaker, our vulnerable children, we need our police. You know, Mr. Speaker, earlier on this year, about 2 or 3 months ago, the new mayor in Auckland, His Worship Phil Goff, and myself, when he was still the MP for Mount Roskill, we convened a meeting. We invited the police to come to this meeting in South Auckland. The reason why we convened this meeting was because we have so many dairies, so many service stations, so many of our small businesses in South Auckland who have been experiencing robbery. Physical assaults, mainly because a lot of these folks were, stealing cigarettes, liquor, and various other items like that. But, Mr. Speaker, the feedback that we got from the hundreds that attended this meeting, from the small business owners, was they themselves don't feel safe. When they actually reach out to the police, the time that it takes our police force to come to assist them was a very long time before they would come. And the resolution of crime for these small business owners, many of them don't even hear back from the police. Mr. Speaker, robberies have tremendously risen by over 13%. Attacks on individuals, assaults have gone up 9%. And it saddens me to hear that in my electorate in Counties Manukau, assaults have gone up 27%. Mr. Speaker, we need our police to be funded well enough so that they are able to do the job that they do well, to do it, and we need them to continue to be able to do things, including vetting of our volunteers. And the growing violence, Mr. Speaker, doesn't affect just small business owners. We also heard from this public meeting a lot of people telling us about
I am going to interrupt the member now. I have been indicating to her that she should speak to the bill, and the member can make passing reference to other matters, not passing reference to the bill. Jenny Salisa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Vetting, as I said earlier on, Mr. Speaker, is a core service for the benefit of the public. The public has a right to know that their children going off to schools and off to kindies are not surrounded by convicted paedophiles, and these are sorts of things that police, in terms of their vetting process, actually do, Mr. Speaker. This user pays system that police will expect our volunteers and our members of the public to do, Mr. Speaker, we do not agree with. Can this current government guarantee in this particular bill that in future other core crime prevention services would not also suddenly be revealed by re-evaluation as purely a private good and not a public good, Mr. Speaker? We do not think that this particular bill guarantees that. Mr. Speaker, the government should stop standing by while police continues to be underfunded and under-resourced. This government should allocate the resources that are needed to prevent crime and to stop crime rates rising. Labor has promised 1,000 more police in our first term in government to crack down on crimes and to make our communities safer, and Labor strongly opposes this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.